Hey everyone, welcome back to Famous People English Stories. Okay, now that the introduction is out of the way, we are dropping the celebrity list today. Instead, we're diving straight into something, well, maybe far more challenging, and honestly, probably more useful for your day-to-day life.
hmm
We're talking about the battlefield of small talk. You know, those essential, sometimes really anxiety-inducing casual chats you have with strangers.
Yeah, whether you're networking or just trying to make a connection, maybe even just being polite on the bus.
Exactly. It's everywhere. And it's tough.
It really is. Small talk is kind of the crucial grease in the engine of social life, professional life, too.
Yeah.
It's not just about filling silence, right? It's about building trust, creating comfort, often really quickly.
But for so many people, especially if you're working on your English fluency, it causes a lot of anxiety
Right.
because the rules, well, they're rarely taught, are they? Not explicitly.
Precisely.
And that's why we're here today. We're analyzing this really rich piece of source material we found. It's a full transcript. Basically captures an English learning dialogue between a taxi driver and his passenger.
Oh, that sounds like a good one.
Yeah, it's packed with specific fluency tips, but also this kind of unwritten guide to cultural etiquette. It's like a little microcosm, you know? Everything that can go right and everything that can go horribly wrong.
Okay, so our mission today then is to pull out not just what words to use, because you can look those up,
Mm-hmm.
but to really get into the delicate etiquette. And I think crucially, the softening phrases. You need those to handle sensitive topics in, let's say, Anglo culture without causing offense or just shutting the conversation down completely.
Right. We want to give you a sort of structural roadmap, how to start, how to keep it going, and how to end conversations gracefully, and give you specific tools, the kind that make you sound not just fluent, but like culturally smart, aware of those social boundaries.
Exactly. So let's unpack this then. Let's
Yeah.
start with the specifics scenario in our sources. The taxi ride itself.
Mm.
It's a perfect example, really, of high-stakes, low-context communication. You're stuck there for a bit.
Okay, so the scene gets set immediately. Passenger gets in the cab, gives the destination, the Holiday Inn at Frenshaw and Hawthorne, the driver. He responds right away, very casual, very competent. He just says, sure thing.
Yeah, and that sure thing, it's a great little phrase, isn't it? We'll definitely circle back to that one later. But it grounds the scene straight away. Easy agreement. Now let's look at the passenger. She's kind of our hero of conversational fluency here.
She really is. So the sources tell us she's actually from Mexico, but the driver knows she's just flown in from China. She was there on a business trip.
Right, so there's that immediate disconnect for the driver. Mexico, China. Okay.
And we even know what she was doing there, visiting local companies that manufacture, get this, bathroom products.
Okay. Bathroom products. Sounds glamorous.
Huh. Maybe not, but it establishes her status, right? She's a professional, probably traveling alone, dealing with complex international business. And this context matters because it kind of raises the bar for how politely the driver should probably be addressing her.
Absolutely. But the driver, and here's where we see the classic cultural blunder.
Mm-hmm.
He just sails straight into the minefield, doesn't he?
He really does. He notes her recent location, China, and then he immediately questions her appearance based on her stated origin, Mexico. He actually says, and this is a quote from the transcript, "You don't look very Chinese to me, if you don't mind me saying so."
Oof. Yeah, that's like putting your foot right in your mouth, isn't it? But then
Yeah.
immediately trying to wipe it off with that little phrase at the end.
If you don't mind me saying so.
He used a softener, yes, but the question itself, questioning someone's perceived identity or how they look based on where they're from, that's a major, major misstep in small talk. You just don't lead with observations about someone's looks or heritage unless it's clearly a compliment and totally unrelated to their origin.
And he doesn't stop there. He then asks two highly sensitive questions. First, how old she is, the cardinal sin, right? Especially asking a woman.
Big no-no.
And then, even though he mentions he has Colombian heritage himself, he sort of awkwardly asks if he speaks Spanish, like trying to pivot the conversation to his background, maybe?
It's just,
Eh,
yeah. The driver's errors are really instructive for us, though. He's trying to connect. You can see that. But his execution is just poor because he lacks that filter, that cultural etiquette we mentioned. He's using assumptions about her appearance and crossing hard boundaries her age.
But this is where the passenger really shines. She becomes our masterclass.
Hmm.
When he asks her age, she doesn't just, grin her teeth and answer. She pushes back perfectly. She keeps it polite, but she establishes a boundary. She says, "Don't you know it's rude to ask a lady her age?"
That response, conversational gold. Seriously. It avoids aggression, it avoids making it super awkward, but it delivers the necessary critique. It's a really sophisticated defense mechanism. And crucially, she only tells him her age 26 after he apologizes and uses that second vital softening phrase.
Right. The driver's apology is, "Don't get me wrong, it's just that you seem so young and already doing business overseas."
Yeah.
So that combo, the apology plus the clarification, that's what allowed the conversation to actually continue. She didn't just shut down.
And that's the subtle dance, isn't it? That small
Mhm.
talk. The driver then reveals he's 40 and he was, quote, born and raised here in the good old US of A, even though he mentioned his Colombian heritage.
Yeah, and the sources kind of hint at the implication there. Even with the heritage, his awkwardness, the fact he asked if he speaks Spanish, it sort of suggests he's maybe rusty
Hmm.
or disconnected from the language and culture. It reinforces his status as, a local who struggles a bit with that cross-cultural fluency.
Mm.
What's really fascinating is how this short little chat shows both things so clearly. The passenger's incredible skill in managing that conflict, and the driver's classic cultural blunders. You see exactly what happens when curiosity just overrides politeness.
Absolutely. So we really need to dissect those specific phrases, the ones that help the passenger navigate those tricky questions, and also the ones the driver used, however clumsily, to apologize and soften his remarks. Because honestly, having the right apology or softener ready can be the difference between making a connection and just creating instant awkward silence.
Okay, this leads us perfectly to the tools, right? The actual phrases. If you want to sound natively fluent and polite, you need to master these defensive and softening phrases. Let's look at four that really act like conversational armor.
Yeah, the goal here is pretty simple, actually. How do you say something sensitive or ask something personal while showing you know you're crossing a boundary? That awareness, that self-monitoring, that's the key to sounding sophisticated, not just clumsy.
Okay, first one. We saw the driver use this, trying to kind of mitigate his own rudeness. If you don't mind me saying so.
Right. Think of this phrase as your verbal shield, or maybe like a buffer. Its function is pure social buffering. It acts as a sort of preemptive apology or a caveat right before you say something that might be a bit rude, maybe critical, or questioning like the driver did with her nationality or appearance. You're signaling, look, I know this might sting a little, but here it comes.
It acknowledges the potential offense, almost asks permission after the fact. And our transcript showed the driver put it at the end of the sentence. "You don't look very Chinese to me, if you don't mind me saying so."
And that placement is perfectly fine. It's really common in spoken English, but you can also lead with it, which maybe makes the apology even stronger or more upfront. For instance, maybe in a work setting, you might say, if you don't mind me saying so, I just don't think we've budgeted quite enough for the marketing campaign. It kind of puts the weight on the phrase itself, not just the criticism that follows.
Yeah, it definitely makes the statement less aggressive. The source material gives another example, more casual. "Hey, Marco, you look a little tired today, if you don't mind me saying so." It lets you make a personal observation without sounding, overly intrusive or critical.
Exactly. You're showing that you're self-monitoring.
Yeah.
And that's a real hallmark of conversational maturity, I think.
Okay, second phrase. This one deals with asking sensitive questions more directly. Excuse me if I'm being a bit nosy, but
Ah, yes. This is a critical one for managing your own curiosity. But first, let's be clear what nosy means, right? Being nosy is being overly curious, asking too many questions, usually about stuff that's private or personal. A good synonym is like a snoop, someone who pokes their nose where it doesn't belong.
So the function of the whole phrase, excuse me if I'm being a bit nosy, but is basically a polite preemptive apology. You use it before you ask the sensitive question. If the driver had used this before asking her age, it might have landed a little better. Still not great, but better.
It shows you're aware of the boundary. By saying it, you signal, look, I know this next question might be impolite or sensitive, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And this does two things. It gives the other person a heads up, and it gives them a clear, easy out. They can decline to answer gracefully. If they do answer, they've sort of implicitly given you permission to cross that line for a moment.
That makes sense. It makes the exchange feel more like a shared responsibility, not just an intrusion. Shows respect.
Okay, moving to the third phrase. This is the one the driver used successfully after the passenger called him out for being rude. It's the cleanup tool, don't get me wrong.
This is such a powerhouse fluency builder. You hear it all the time. It just means basically don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
Right, exactly. Its function is all about clarifying your intent. You use it when you've said something that could sound critical or negative, or maybe just focuses on one small point. And you want to make sure they know that's not your main point or your overall judgment. You're correcting a potentially negative impression before it really takes root and damages the interaction.
Like the driver used it to clarify he wasn't saying she looked old, but surprisingly young for her job.
Precisely. And our sources give some excellent other examples. Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, it's not that I think you stole my computer, it's just that you were the only one who could get into my room. You're carefully separating a harsh potential conclusion from a verifiable fact.
Or in a work context. I do have a few problems with the budget allocation, but don't get me wrong, I still think the core strategy is excellent. So you're validating the bigger picture while still pointing out a specific flaw. Seems essential for smoothing over potential conflict and keeping things, civil.
Absolutely. It maintains rapport.
Okay, but wait a second. If the driver used "don't get me wrong" and it worked, she answered him after that, does that mean it's actually okay to ask a rude question as long as you have the right apology phrase ready to go afterwards?
Ah, that's a brilliant question. Really gets to the heart of it. And the answer is, well, it's nuanced. No, it's never really okay to be rude intentionally. But in spontaneous small talk, mistakes happen. We all make them. A phrase like "don't get me wrong" is the tool you use to try and salvage the situation after you realize you've messed up. It shows your intent wasn't malicious, even if the impact was offensive.
Okay.
The fact the passenger accepted it and continued the conversation shows it was successful as damage control. But you should never, ever rely on it as part of your opening strategy. Don't plan to be rude and then apologize. That's not the point.
Got it. Damage control phrases are for recovery, not initiation. Good distinction. Okay, our final phrase in this fluency toolbox is one the passenger used really well to turn the conversation back to the driver. What about yourself?
Yes. Functionally, this is just a very common conversational way to ask, "And what about you?" It smoothly turns the question back to the person who asked it first. It keeps the conversation flowing, prevents it from stalling, which is a huge skill in small talk. The passenger used it right after revealing her age, didn't she? Just neatly shifted the focus off herself.
Yeah. And here's that technical point from our materials that people focused on fluency will really care about. Grammatically speaking, "what about you" is technically preferred. It's considered more correct. However, using yourself, "what about yourself," is so incredibly common in everyday American English, especially in casual chat, that using it actually helps you sound more fluent, more native-like, instantly.
It's one of those lovely little conversational quirks, isn't it? It separates textbook English from how people actually talk. When we use yourself, we're often sort of implying the whole context of what came before. Like, I'm going away on holiday this weekend. What about yourself? Implies, what are you doing? It shows you're comfortable with the rhythm of casual language, even if it bends the grammar rules a tiny bit.
So the takeaway is use yourself in casual conversation to sound natural, but maybe stick to you if you're writing a formal email or giving a presentation. Find that balance.
Exactly. Context is everything.
Okay, this section gets really interesting, focusing on some of the strong vocabulary words that popped up, the ones that really anchor the conversation, give it specific context. This is our language takeaway section. Let's start with that immediate yes the driver used. Sure thing.
Ah, sure thing. That's such a native-like powerhouse of agreement. Its function is simple. It's a very common way to say yes or no problem or okay, I'll do it. But it implies more than just agreement. It suggests competence, reliability,
You
ease.
hear it constantly, right? Work, casual chat, service situations. The sources point out how versatile it is. If a colleague asks, could you send me that summary by end of day? Replying, sure thing, just sounds more efficient, more positive than a flat, yes, I will.
Totally. It's like a verbal shortcut that establishes ease. It confirms, yep, I agree, and I'll get that done without any hassle or complaint.
Okay, next one the driver used, born and raised.
Right. This is a specific defining phrase. It means you were born in a particular place and you live there, or maybe nearby, for your whole childhood, your formative years. The driver used it to confirm he's a lifelong resident of the U.S.
It's a quick, punchy way to establish your authenticity, maybe your deep local roots, especially if you're talking about travel or local knowledge. If someone asks, are you from around here? And you say, yep, born and raised right here in this city, it immediately validates your perspective on local stuff.
And he paired that with a very specific, kind of affectionate nickname for his country, the good old U.S. of A.
Yeah, that's not neutral language, is it?
Hmm.
It sounds friendly, affectionate, maybe a bit fond. It's a slightly patriotic, cozy, almost nostalgic way to say the United States of America.
It definitely implies a certain warmth, maybe cultural pride, sometimes even a touch of self-deprecating humor, depending on the context. You wouldn't use it in a formal diplomatic speech, obviously, but in small talk, it helps create that immediate casual connection. It feels much softer than just saying America.
Okay, finally, let's nail down the concept of heritage. The driver mentioned his Colombian heritage.
Yes, heritage is such a critical word in modern small talk, especially in diverse societies. It refers to your culture, your customs, your history, your family origin. And importantly, having heritage doesn't automatically mean you were born there or even that you speak the language fluently. If your grandparents or maybe great-grandparents came from Colombia, you have Colombian heritage. That's a deep, personal fact about your background, your roots.
So it's the difference between asking someone, are you Colombian, which assumes nationality, versus do we have Colombian heritage? The second question acknowledges a background connection without making assumptions about their current nationality or, importantly, their language skills. It avoids the mistake the driver made by asking if he spoke Spanish.
Exactly. It's a much more sensitive and accurate way to inquire about someone's background.
Okay, so we've dissected the linguistic tools, the specific words, but now we need to zoom out, right? Look at the broader social strategy. Our sources confirm what we all kind of know. Talking to someone you don't know can feel really challenging, but it's such a critical skill for networking, making friends, or even just maintaining basic social grace in public.
Hmm. And the sources stress that the key ingredients seem to be confidence, or at least acting confident, a friendly attitude,
Mm.
and crucially, the ability to find some kind of common ground, however small. But before you can even think about succeeding, you absolutely must avoid crashing the social car right at the start.
Which brings us neatly to part A of our social roadmap, the cultural minefield, or maybe just topics to avoid, the don'ts. This is where you can get into deep trouble, specifically in Anglo culture. And understanding why these are taboo is almost more important than just memorizing the rule.
Absolutely. Knowing the why helps you navigate the gray areas.
Okay, first one, age. We saw this play out with the driver. Avoid asking a woman her age. It's generally impolite pretty much everywhere, but culturally, in Anglo settings, it's often seen as really violating a core boundary of personal privacy and autonomy.
Yes, exactly. And that sensitivity often extends beyond just women, though it's particularly cute there. The default should be just don't ask an adult their age unless there's a very clear, practical, formal reason, like filling out an official form.
Okay. Number two, and this is a huge one. We need to spend a moment here. Money salary. People are incredibly sensitive about money. Never ever ask how much money someone makes, what their salary is, or even how much something they own costs, like their car or their house.
This rule is really deeply rooted in Anglo culture's emphasis on sort of radical individualism and privacy. Financial status is seen as intrinsically tied to your professional success, your personal autonomy, your choices. Asking about it feels incredibly intrusive, potentially judgmental, and just intensely personal. It's a boundary that's often not even crossed among close friends, let alone strangers or new acquaintances.
So it's not just shyness, it's seen as a fundamental breach of privacy.
Exactly. Now, if you choose to mention your own salary or financial situation, that's generally fine. But you must never put someone else on the spot by asking about theirs.
Okay, that's crystal clear. Third one, marital status. Here, the sources say you have to be cautious. It's tricky because your intent might be innocent, but the perception is what rules the interaction.
Mm-hmm. Now, if the other person has already volunteered information about their family, maybe they mentioned their kids or their spouse, then it's usually okay to follow up with a related question like, oh, how long have you been married? You're building on something they opened up.
Right. Following their lead.
But if you lead with, so are you married?
Mm.
Or are you single?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in a professional setting or even a casual first meeting, it could very easily be interpreted as you implying romantic interest or just being nosy about their private life. Our sources strongly warn, wait for them to open that door first. Otherwise, you risk making the whole interaction immediately awkward or uncomfortable.
Okay, don'ts are covered. Avoid age, money, and unsolicited questions about marital status. Got it. Now, how do we actually get the conversation engine started? Part B, starting a short or long conversation, the opener.
Right. The first step is always observation. Just look around you. Wherever you are, the cafe, the conference, the airport lounge, find something immediate, something neutral in the environment to comment on. The weather is the classic, but it could be a piece of art on the wall, or maybe an interesting book the person is carrying. You're just trying to create a tiny piece of shared reality.
Makes sense. Then focus on the first impression. Use a simple, warm greeting. Hi, hello, always pair with a genuine smile if you can manage it. And use open body language. No crossed arms that screams closed off or defensive. Keep your hands visible. Maintain an open posture. You need to look approachable.
Exactly. And then the core strategy for engagement. Ask simple, open-ended questions. Remember those. Questions that need more than just a yes or no. They invite the person to share a little thought or an opinion, not just a dry fact. People generally like sharing their thoughts on low-stakes topics.
So if you're at a conference, instead of just, do you know the host? Maybe try, how do you know the host? I heard they put on great events. Or if you're waiting somewhere, is this your first time here? I've heard the coffee's really good.
Precisely. The goal is just to give the conversation a little room to breathe right from the start. Even something like, how has your day been so far, is often better than a simple, how are you? Because it encourages a slightly more detailed situational answer. Not always, but often.
Okay, that initial spark is lit. But now we need to keep the fire going. Part C. Maintaining the conversation. The flow. This is where I think a lot of people stumble. They stop listening and start desperately planning their next witty remark.
Oh, absolutely. Active listening is non-negotiable. It's what makes the other person feel valued, feel heard. You have to show interest visually and verbally, not occasionally. Maintain appropriate eye contact. Don't stare them down, but don't look away constantly either. And make those little validation noises or comments. That's interesting. Oh, I didn't realize that. Or, oh, really?
Our sources use a great analogy. They describe a good conversation flowing smoothly, like a game of catch. Both people take turns speaking and listening, throwing the conversational ball back and forth equally. The moment one person starts holding onto that ball for too long, say, lecturing for more than 30 or 40 seconds without a pause, they're dominating. And the game is basically over, even if they keep talking.
That's a perfect analogy. And the best way to show you're actively listening, playing your part in the catch game, is by using follow-up questions. These must be detailed and based specifically on what the person just said. That proves you actually absorbed their point. If they mention a difficult business trip, don't just jump in with your own travel story. Ask, oh, where did you go? Or what was the biggest challenge you faced on that trip?
I completely agree that follow-up questions are crucial. But, okay, let me ask this. How do we stop an open-ended question like how has your day been? Example, from turning into a 5-minute monologue about someone's painful root canal. You know? Where's the line on appropriate sharing and small talk?
That's a very practical question. And that's where the game of catch idea comes back in, along with respecting boundaries. If someone is oversharing or dominating the conversation, you need to subtly try and regain control. You can use a technique sometimes called bridging. You acknowledge their point briefly. Wow, that sounds like quite an ordeal. And then you smoothly bridge to a related, but perhaps lighter or more general topic. Speaking of dentists, have you managed to try the coffee here yet? I need some caffeine.
You maintain politeness, but gently redirect the energy.
Okay, bridging. Acknowledge and redirect. Got it. Now, for the actual content of the conversation, the source is pretty clear. Keep it light, stick to common ground, hobbies, interests, travel, maybe work if it comes up naturally. Finding a shared interest, music, sports, movies, books, that obviously makes it way more engaging for both of you. Definitely. And also, never underestimate the power of humor. A little lighthearted joke or a funny observation about the situation can instantly build connection, relax the atmosphere, keep it simple, keep it positive. The sources suggest focusing on external things, like joking about the terrible weather. I feel like I'm melting like an ice cream cone out here. Avoid anything controversial, obviously, or too personal.
Right. And if the conversation does start to slow down, those awkward silences, how do you handle that skillfully?
You need to be ready to change topics naturally. Don't just abruptly switch. Try to connect the new subject to the current environment or situation. Observe your surroundings again. If you're at a busy market, maybe say, wow, this place has a great buzz, doesn't it? Have you seen how busy that cheese stall is? It injects fresh energy without feeling totally random.
Okay. And finally, the golden rule that runs through all of this.
Respect boundaries. Absolutely. If the person is giving really short answers, if they seem distracted, maybe looking around a lot, or just seem hesitant, they might simply not want to talk right then. And that is completely okay. That signals the end of the potential conversation. Give them space. Don't keep pushing questions into a reluctant silence. Maybe try one more gentle observation. But if you get nothing back, just let it go politely.
We've covered starting, maintaining, but the ending is just as important, isn't it? Getting out gracefully. So, part D, ending the conversation gracefully. The goal here is to leave a positive final impression. Make the other person feel comfortable, feel good about the interaction, however brief it was.
Exactly. First, you need to recognize the right moment to stop. Look for a natural pause in the conversation, maybe the end of a particular topic, or perhaps after you've shared a laugh. Try very hard not to cut them off mid-sentence just to announce you're leaving. Find that lull.
Okay, and then how do you actually signal the close?
One of the simplest, most effective ways is by summarizing and valuing something you discussed. This does two things. It signals the end is near, and it shows appreciation for their input. You could say something like, well, it was really interesting hearing about your trip to Italy. Sounds amazing. Or, I really enjoyed chatting with you about the game last night. It affirms them and leaves that positive final feeling.
That makes sense. Validation right at the end. What if you genuinely need to leave while the conversation is still going strong, like at a networking event where you need to move on?
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
In that case, you have to be polite but direct. State your need to leave clearly but softly. Something like, I would honestly love to keep talking about this, but I actually have to head off now. It was really great meeting you. And giving a small, non-specific reason can often soften it. I need grab another drink before the next session, or I promised I'd catch up with a colleague. It makes the ending feel natural, comfortable, doesn't require a big excuse.
Okay. And then the optional final step, continuing the connection.
Right? Optional is the key word here. If the vibe has been really good, if they seem genuinely open and enthusiastic, then you might suggest staying in touch casually. Maybe we could connect on LinkedIn, or perhaps we'll run into each other again sometime. But you absolutely have to read their reaction carefully before you even suggest exchanging contact info. If there's any hesitation at all, the polite thing to do is just end the interaction there naturally. Recognize that some connections are just meant to be brief, pleasant moments.
So the graceful exit is about being direct but gentle, making sure that final memory is positive, and keeping your sort of social professionalism intact.
Precisely.
Wow. Okay, so what does this all boil down to? We started with just dissecting one single conversation, that kind of tense taxi ride, and we've pulled out basically a whole framework for social interaction, from the tiny grammar points of softening phrases all the way up to big cultural sensitivities around things like money and age.
Yeah, and I think the key takeaway really is that small talk isn't some magical natural talent. It's a skill. It can be learned. It can be mastered. And the mastery really lies in the subtlety. The secret to sounding both well-informed and fluent seems to be threefold. One, using those conversational softeners, like, don't get me wrong, if you don't mind me saying so, to manage potential conflict or awkwardness.
2, asking those open-ended and crucially follow-up questions to show you're really actively listening.
And 3, strictly adhering to those cultural don'ts we talked about, respecting privacy around age, money, and marital status, especially in Anglo contexts.
It really feels like it's all about finding that balance, doesn't it? Between speaking and listening, giving the other person space, making them feel valued, feel heard.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, maybe the real goal of conversation isn't just to talk, is it? It's to connect, to make the other person feel genuinely heard and valued. And how often, honestly, do we fail to truly listen? Because we're too busy in our own heads, planning our next clever comment, or searching for a new topic because we fear silence.
Mm-hmm.
The real skill, maybe, isn't just in speaking perfectly. It's in that balance, that rhythm, the intentional pause that shows you're processing what they said, and yes, the polite, graceful exit. So maybe this raises an important question for you listening right now. When was the last time you consciously made an effort to use a specific detailed follow-up question, one based directly on something the other person just shared, instead of just jumping to a new, unrelated topic? That focused validation, that might be the true hallmark of real conversational connection.